So my name's Ahmed. I'm with Rising Tide Seattle. We're going to move into the panel portion of the evening. So just so folks know how that's going to work, each of the panelists is, a little closer to the mouth. Is that better? Yes. Awesome. Not that great with technology. I apologize. We're going to move into the panel portion of the night. The way that that's going to work, some folks have some questions already, but we're going to let each of the panelists speak for a couple of minutes, think about 5 to 7 minutes about their work and the groups that they're part of, and then we're going to take questions after that. And I'm just going to try and keep stack the best that I can. And I think we have about an hour for this, right, Bong? Yeah. Awesome. I'm going to be really brief. I just wanted to let some folks know why Rising Tide, a group that predominantly identifies as an environmental organization and as a climate justice group, is here at this conference, and why we think that it's really important to us to stand in solidarity with folks facing displacement and facing housing justice issues and in the housing justice fight. So I'll try and be as brief as I can. And there's kind of 4 points that we just wanted to express. The first is just that whether it's the floods in Pakistan, the typhoon in the Philippines, or Hurricane Sandy and Katrina, the facts of climate change are driving displacement around the world and will lead to more displacement and more housing instability. And when we see those effects, we see people who are unstable in their housing or living in substandard housing drastically more impacted than others in community. And so if we're a climate justice organization and we truly believe in seeing a just transition to a sustainable world, standing in solidarity with folks that are fighting for all people to have stable and sustainable housing is essential to our fight. So that's why it's important for us to be here. And then in places like New Orleans or in the Rockaways after Sandy, we see the disaster capitalism that takes into effect, that when climate-related disasters happen, that leads to development companies and landlords evicting thousands of their tenants, stealing property and consolidating it for gentrification. So the actual impacts of climate change, which impact people who are housing unstable the greatest, also leads to a grab on land and leads to more displacement. So we see all these issues as connected, and we see the struggle of fighting for housing justice as building the community and the movement that we need to bring about the kind of systemic change to confront both the economic crisis we're facing in our society and the environmental crisis. So that was all I wanted to say, just let you know why we as an environmental group think it's important for us to stand here with you. And I think I'll move on to the panelists. So each of the panelists is going to get about 5 to 7 minutes to talk a little bit about their organization and the work that they're doing. The focus for this panel is going to be on coalition building, how can we work better together, and on tactics and strategies for victory, which I believe, though folks are free to speak to whatever they wish. And without further ado, I guess I will pass it off to Lisa Hooper.
Hello, my name's Lisa Hooper. I've been involved in the grassroots homeless activism work here in Seattle since 2008. I've actually struggled with homelessness off and on a lot of my adult life, both as a single parent and as a single woman. And it's largely economic. However, the system, the way it's set up, tells me that there's something wrong with me. They tell me that I need services that, when in fact what I need is employment. I need, a living wage so that I can afford a place to live. And so in 2008, I became involved with SHARE, and they helped me to find my voice and helped me to realize that my voice mattered. And as a result, over the past 6 years, I've ran with that. And I work on a real grassroots level with other homeless people. And I work to empower them so that they can find their voice like I did, so that we can, as a group, affect change. Because who better to tell you what we need than us? I mean, who better? So many times, the system, the way it's set up now, housing is held over our heads like a carrot. Like, if you just do this, there's so much morality caught up in it that if you just do this, if you just act that way, then we'll give you a place to live. Well, never mind the fact that it's a human right. It's a human right recognized well over 50 years ago. And instead, the system keeps holding it over our head like a carrot, instead of figuring out a way to make it work for all. And so that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Okay, hello, my name is Jean Barton, and this is my husband over there, Byron Barton. And I'm here representing SAFE, and SAFE stands for Stand Against Foreclosures and Evictions. However, that is a cornerstone of the organization, but it encompasses a lot more than that. A part of their mission statement says, as a member of the human community, we share a vision that recognizes housing is a human right. SAFE is a community organization whose mission is to fight for radical social and economic justice, gender equality by fostering working class power through direct action, coalition building, education, and advocacy. In organizing poor and working class people of diverse cultures and nationalities, we shall encourage individual empowerment and community leadership to generate a movement effecting systematic change and societal transformation. So that, I think, is really the whole picture of SAFE. Now, how I came to SAFE, and I have a list of questions that I'm kind of supposed to address, and I figured that the best way to address those questions is to tell our story of how Byron and I end up coming to SAFE. So a few years ago, we moved into a house that was Byron's family home of almost 60 years to take care of his mother who had Alzheimer's because his father had died. We lived there for 5 years, and she passed on, and then we got a mortgage that, well, I can't remember exactly what kind of mortgage it is, other than it wasn't a good mortgage. However, yeah.
Predatory.
Predatory, okay, it was a predatory mortgage. Anyway, so we had to pay off, when she died, we had to pay off all these bills. Our house had not sold for as much as we had expected it to, and so we ended up kind of in the hole, and we borrowed the money to pay off his brother and sister and all these bills and all this kind of stuff. As time went on, we were doing pretty good. We were doing remodeling. I have an interior design degree, and we were remodeling houses for sale. Of course, the bubble broke, and our business went down the tubes. So we went out and put our application in all over the place. Well, actually online. Now you can't actually go someplace. But we put in hundreds of applications, and we didn't even get interviews. So out of desperation, I went to AARP, and they had a program, if you're 55, that you could go, and they would give you 20 hours of work for minimum wage at a nonprofit. I ended up at a place called Mary's Place, a organization for homeless women and children, a day center. And for the first time, I saw homeless people in a completely different way. They're not the person standing on the street corner begging for money. They're real people. They're families who have no homes, through oftentimes no fault of their own. Women who are running from abusive husbands, women who have had cancer and lost their job. So everybody has different stories. They aren't all drug addicts and prostitutes. They're regular people who, through unfortunate circumstances, end up with no place to live. And my heart went out to these groups of people, but I never thought it would be me. And I spent 3.5 years working there, helping. And then my husband had a heart attack. And he had a stent put in his heart, and it threw a blood clot to his brain, and he had a massive stroke. We didn't think he was going to live. Well, he pulled through. He's right over there now. Thank you. But it changed our life forever. everything changed. And we were already having problems because I'm making minimum wage, he can't get a job, and now he's completely disabled. And so even though I had never really envisioned my life this way, I realized that, excuse me, I'm kind of distracted. I heard him talking. Okay. So here I am working in a day center for homeless women, and my life is falling apart in front of their eyes. Suddenly I'm not just an outsider who's come in to help those poor homeless people. I'm falling apart just like them. I'm losing my home. But I continue, my husband continues to fight, even though he's disabled. He starts writing, and he had been working on it before he became disabled, studying the legal process of what was going on with our house. Because as we started looking at a mortgage, we saw all these fraudulent activities and things that were completely wrong in the mortgage. And so he started investigating, and he knew that there was some way of fighting back. However, I thought, the banks, they have all the money, they have all the power, we can't do anything. But so I just kind of placated and said, okay, yeah, honey, go ahead, do it. And so he had written up a lawsuit, and after he had his stroke, it was all done. And so I, turned it in. And that saved us a year, and we went to the court system, and they just blew us off. So then he rewrote it. We put it back through again, and they blew us off. And then during this time, we also tried to have other negotiations, and they lost our paperwork over and over and over again. And so it was obvious that they didn't want us to live there anymore. Well, this last time, which was last December, we got a notice that we were going to have our house sold. And so he starts trying to figure out what to do. So we're looking for the company Quality Loan Service, who's going to sell our house. Well, they're no longer in Washington. They were based in California, so it took us a while to try to find them. By the time we found them, it was too late to stop the sale. So our house was sold. We had 10 days to write up a lawsuit against them, because you only have a small time frame if you're a regular person. However, if you're a bank, you can take as long as you want to. So he spent 80 hours writing this up, and I put it into the court system, and then but once it was done, we couldn't really do anything beyond that because we don't really know what we're doing. So he finds an attorney, Joe Smith, who's been working on this battle for a long time. During this time, I had gotten several mailers in our mailbox from the city. And I got all sorts of stuff from all sorts of people who wanted to help us out. But I decided to go to a SAFE meeting. And here was a wonderful, passionate group of people dedicated to helping people who were going through foreclosure. Although I had already gone through foreclosure, we were kind of past that point. They said, "Do you want to fight for your home?" And I said, "Yes." Then we'll fight with you. And we absolutely can. So they set up a campaign. We started with the media, did interviews. They surrounded our house. Many of you might have seen it on TV. Then the King County Police came while we were all there and tried to evict us. So we've already gone through some drills about chaining ourselves to his bed, my girlfriend and I. So we chained ourselves to the bed, one of those big concrete tubes, and that kept the police at bay long enough for the media to surround our house. The King County Police made the wonderful decision of taking him out right through the front of the house, full view of the media. And they're dragging him out even though he doesn't want to go, and they're going to put him in an ambulance. And they take him to the ambulance, they put him in there, and these wonderful people decided, how can we stop? They felt bad because they weren't able to stop this. They threw themselves underneath the ambulance.
Yeah.
And one person else, somebody else would throw themselves underneath. And the sheriff, deputy sheriff came over to me and says, can you make these people stop? I said, well, you know what? They are nonviolent protests. Just let it play out. So they just stood back and just let it happen. The Seattle police were all there, and eventually they decided to give up. And they let them go. And you can see online Byron's arm up in the air. But you know, when they took us out of the house, he had no pants on. Only part of his wheelchair. He has a feeding tube, so he needs a feeding tube to drink. He can't drink. And he was left out there with no shoes, no pants, no way of hydrating himself. Left him right on the street corner. The house was locked up. Well, I guess that they accidentally left the door unlocked. And we moved, or Byron got moved back in full view of the media. Back into the house. Not shortly after that, because it was a full view of the media, they kind of figured out we were back in the house and sent a thug after us to tell us to move, and the Seattle police came, and we had told them that this was a land dispute, and so they decided to give us some time. As our group was sitting there putting their heads together saying, well, you know, we can't fight this at this level, so we decided to go to the city council, to the mayor's office. The very, I think it was the very next, Monday. Yeah.
That was on Friday.
Yeah, that was on Friday. On Monday, they stormed the city council's office and the mayor's office and had the media out there. The mayor came out eventually and said that he was going to take care of things. And he told me, oh, we're going to find you a place, and we're going to let this play out until, you know, because we have a lawsuit pending. So we're just going to let this play out until then. Of course, that wasn't really true. But ever since, then the company who bought the house, who has quite a few properties, over 40 properties, they're sitting there empty, which our house is still sitting there empty, decided to sue the mayor and the Seattle Police Department because they wouldn't throw us out. So they went to court, and the judge ruled that we had 20 days to figure this out between us, and that the King County Police would need another an eviction notice. Well, evidently the King County Police didn't hear what the judge said, because they turned around with us thinking we had 20 days. A few days later came and surprised us and drug us out of the house. Byron was lost for hours in the system. We now owe $1,000 for ambulance fees and another $1,500 for emergency services where they took him to Harborview. Eventually, he got back to the VA. We found him, he got back to the VA, and he was in a nursing home for 2 months. Well, fortunately for me, I have many friends and resources that help me get me a place to stay, get my kids a place to stay, and help me get into a house. So we're now living in a rental house in Renton. And SAFE has been there as the backbone and support. And it has given me courage to continue this fight. And I realized, even though we lost this particular battle, we haven't lost the war.
Amen.
We're continuing to fight. And that it is crucial that we have an organization like SAFE to be here to support people, to be your friend, to have a shoulder to listen, to cry on, to listen to you, and to know that most of us have been there too. So I'm hoping that most of this, our story, kind of addresses those questions of, you know, what is it that SAFE does? How does it help? It sometimes it's easier to fight for other people than it is to fight for yourself, but they give the voice to the people who have no voice. They help those of us have courage by standing with us. And actually, I'm getting a little bit of enjoyment going to the bank and protesting. Every couple of weeks we get a chase and go do a little protest. So it's been kind of fun for me too. So now I'm going to pass it on to the next person.
Thank you all. My name is Abdi Mohamed. I work with SEIU. I was one of the organizers in CETA campaign, $15, the one in Seattle. So I don't want to go to talk about the income inequality, what we see in our neighborhood, and the Wall Street, the injustice, and all this. It's something that we sleep with it, we wake up with it, and we know all about it. But I'll be very precise, concise, and just try to be focused on the point and what we need to do. And after that, I need to hear from you and how we can win this campaign. First of all, I want to thank those people who made this event successful, the organizations and individuals who are here tonight. This campaign, when the Stepping Forward was introduced to our city, there was a lot of hearing that was going on with the Seattle Housing Authority. There was a lot of people who are coming every time, different communities who have been impacted by this Stepping Forward, if it happens, low-income community. I live in Hillman City, just one block from here, and I know my community, the East African community, people who came here as a refugee, who the only thing they knew was like they're going to the country where there is an opportunity, and they've never ever dreamt that one day they will be homeless, one day they will be sleeping under the bridge, or one day, such kind of things will happen to them. They came here with little English or no English, which of course English is not their first language. They're struggling, they go to ESL, it takes a long time to learn, and even if they get a job, there is such kind of job that even cannot put bread on the table. There is a minimum wage, and not only they get a minimum wage, 50% of my community are unemployed. We did that research, we went to the community, we went to the mosque, and 50% of the East African community have no job. It is not that these people don't want the job, it is because it is hard to find the job. People who have their bachelor's, people who have their master's, who English is their first language, graduated from UW, are struggling to find a good job in this city. So we don't need a rocket scientist to figure out that it is hard to get a job if you don't have an ESL, you don't have an AA degree, or English is not your first language. To move on, I see whenever there is a campaign, people want to create a division, like our idea, their idea, and everybody wants to take like the lead in every campaign. What if we all take the lead? What if we become united? Not only united, we become united in our diversity, because Seattle is such very diverse city. We have people who are from Asian origin in Seattle area. We have the Ethiopian community. We have the Somali community. We have different immigrant communities who are being impacted by this Stepping Forward. So when I hand over the mic, I want to leave with you one assignment. And that assignment is, how can we build a strong coalition that is very strong and we can destroy such a barbaric bill or like initiative they are trying to introduce into our city. Imagine the city of Seattle and Seattle Housing Authority, they want to create housing in the expense of making other people homeless. Everybody needs housing. As we have said, other previous speakers, housing is a human right. So please, let us not finger point to each other. Everybody is very important in this campaign. Without a coalition, without a strong movement, we'll be so vulnerable and we can be defeated. Thank you very much again, and I want to hear from you how we can build a strong movement. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Matthew Adams, and I'm a member of SeaSol, the Seattle Solidarity Network, and we've been around for about 7 years now, and we are focused on small-scale direct action against bosses and landlords. For example, one of our recent fights was against a restaurant called La Lotte, and two workers there contacted SeaSol because they were not getting their tip. They were getting their tip stolen. So the way our organisation works is that people contact us, and we see if they are interested in taking action. They have to be willing to take action for themselves, because we try and put people affected by problems into the leadership of their own campaign. So they contacted us, and they decided to go on strike at their restaurant for 3 weeks, and in the meantime we supported the strike by having pickets outside the strike, outside the restaurant, turning people away so that the restaurant lost lots of customers, and were eventually forced to give in to their employees' demands and institute a fair tipping scheme instead of taking all the tips for the management. As well as improving some of the working conditions. And that's just one example of around 40 or so fights that we've had through our 7-year existence. A lot of our other campaigns are centered on housing and landlords, because landlords very frequently believe in the city they can get away with all sorts of things, like not making repairs, stealing deposits, well, routinely and systematically stealing deposits in the case of lots of management companies. They'll just try and take every single possible deposit they can get, and they know that most people will not fight to get that deposit back. And it's actually part of the model, their economic model, in terms of the amount of profits they'll make, is they factor in a guaranteed stolen deposit. So our approach is to cause economic damage to our opponents, these bosses and landlords, by preventing them from being able to make money through turning up at their offices and causing a demonstration there, or by putting lots of posters up outside the buildings they're trying to rent, saying, don't rent here because of mold, if that's the case, or because the landlord won't make repairs, or unfair stolen deposits, or whatever the reason is. Or sometimes we organise fake showings where we claim to be interested in seeing a new apartment for rent, and then actually instead the apartment management company or the landlord gets a crowd of angry protesters, which is not a pleasant surprise for them. I won't go on too long about how SeaSol works, because earlier today there was already a workshop done by people from SeaSol, and they described one of our fights against Sterling Manor, which was a large group of tenants fighting against mold there, that we eventually won. So part of the question being asked today is about coalition building. We've already cooperated to some extent with SAFE in terms of mutual mobilizing and things like that. I think one thing that all of our organizations can do is offer trainings to each other and to the public, the interested public at large, on our tactics and how we work. For example, SeaSol has developed a lot of experience in being able to research targets, find out exactly every detail about a landlord or boss, and exactly where their weak points are and how to target them. We can help with training on how to mobilize large numbers of people to come to events, and like what kind of strategy, like how to look at things strategically and stuff like that. And I'm sure other organisations here could also offer a lot of extremely useful advice to us and to each other. So an important part of coalition building might be extensive mutual training type things. And one of the questions asked, well, sorry, this is just an intro of the group and then we go around to what?
Yeah, so we're
Okay, so that's probably enough for now, I'll pass it on.
Cool. Did you have more than one, or are we going to Lynn? Oh, we're going this way. Oh, we're going to Lynn. Okay.
Sorry for the interruption earlier, folks. That is action taken by Lynn. I did not take this on behalf of the tenants union, which I'm a member of, and you know why I'm here on the panel. Like Abdi, I've been involved in Stepping Forward organizing. I'm a Section 8 tenant in SHA. Before that, I lived in one of the public housing buildings for 5 years. Back in 2007, I was lucky enough to get to go to the United States Social Forum in Atlanta. I also went to one in Detroit. When I went to Atlanta, I met public housing tenants from all over the country. I could not believe how many people mobilized to get like 300 or 400 public housing leaders from all over the country, including people that were living under the bridge in Survivors Village in New Orleans. And they came to the United States Social Forum. And I got lucky enough to be on a panel of national public housing activists. It was really refreshing to be the only white person on the panel, you know, and the rest of that panel was all like community of color leaders that were like, their analysis was so advanced, you know, compared to like a lot of us here in Seattle. They brought up concepts like leadership from below and saw the economic crisis and the housing crisis in terms of the global thing, that this isn't something that's happening in your city or my city, it's part of something called neoliberalism. And I came back from that social forum really having learned a lot about how they're organizing to save public housing and, you know, and in many cases like doing things like black-brown organizing, groups that never got along together and uniting. And that's like the vision I want here. So like, you know, when I walked out, I was a little bit frustrated. One of the lessons I would love for people to know about what coalition building is all about, it's letting the people that are affected by the conditions be the leaders. If you are a white guy from a leftist party, and I don't want to demonize any party or, you know, any white guy or even white women, you know, come to help the movement. You're not here to lead the movement. Low-income people, immigrants, people of color are not stupid, you know. They don't need to have a speech read to them, you know. Take a lesson from like radical women, for instance. You know, I'm not a socialist or anything, but they've been very respectful when it comes to stepping forward organizing. You know, they don't come to tenant meetings and try to read long speeches and take over. So I think like here we have this panel. We have people who are living in a tent. You know, we have people that are having their housing threatened by stepping forward. You know, we have people of color that have lost houses to foreclosure. And that is like the leadership of this movement. And I guess I want to segue on to like the Right to the City Alliance, which Safe is a member, and Steve, like in Boston, their group is a member. And you know, I really like their principles for organizing, and like some of the common points are, you know, that land shouldn't be speculative. Land is for, you know, people, not for profit. That there should be common spaces like the commons that's held in perpetuity for people. There's a statement about like communities of color and an prison industrial complex and criminalizing of people. Another tenet of Right to the City is immigrant justice and recognizing that, you know, borders shouldn't be something to prevent people from having like jobs, having their lives, having their homeless, and everything. In fact, you know, in my personal involvement in the Stepping Forward campaign, the thing I've really enjoyed the most is working with people from the East African community. I've never really worked in a close coalition, and it's just been really great, you know, to see how many are coming to the demonstrations and being in the front of, you know, with their signs and not being afraid of the Seattle Housing Authority. A lot of people would love to be there, you know, but they're afraid, a lot of tenants. So East African, SHA tenants and their supporters, you know, I mean, they have been like really, it's been really great working with you know. And also right to the city, you know, it's about, like I said, seeing the crisis in this global thing, and it's part of globalization, you know. I mean, a lot of it did come out, you know, of the 1999 WTO thing, which was another thing that could have been criticized, because, you know, it seemed to die because the leadership should have been from people from, you know, that were more effective. And that's kind of one of my theories about why it evaporated, you know, and everything. So that's pretty much, and it's locally here, you know, for people to build coalitions with, you know, or there's like there are a lot of immigrant-like groups here, you know. The tenants union over the years is like, some of its longest standing partners were like Lilo, which was a organization that's also as old as the tenants union, 37 years old, that was formed when people of color were not allowed into labor unions, and they're still going strong. They're more active now in the international workers movement, and, you know, the issues that are happening in Mexico over water and stuff, but they're still here. And so those are the kind of groups that the tenants union has worked with, Puget Sound Sage, a new group, a new coalition in Southeast Seattle called South Core, that's mainly immigrant rights leaders, and you know, that is kind of what I have to say for now.
Cool. So I think we have some time to take some questions. Once again, the theme. Oh, sorry, Steve. You were all the way down there. I missed you. I apologize.
Okay, I thought I had escaped for a minute. Well, the quality of this panel, I think, is indicative of the quality of the whole Radical Organizing Conference, so I'm proud to be here. City Life looks at itself as a radical group and as a base building group. The radical group we define, like we talked last night, as radical organizing, as meeting the needs of the person walking through the door in a practical way, but meeting those needs also in a way that undermines the system that caused the problem. But that radical understanding and that radical approach, we insist on blending with base building. And for us, base building means that, you know, there's people coming in who are directly affected by the problem, like you said, and who are running their own campaign. And that includes, even as City Life goes on, that the staff we recruit are from the base, that the executive director we recruit are from the base, that our entire structure from leadership to staff to executive director are all coming out of the base over time. And so that's what it means to us to do base building. I also mentioned last night that we, as a radical group, that we're insisting on maintaining our own initiative and our willingness to do militant things and put a radical frame on those things. But at the same time that we're doing that, we're trying to present that in a way which can build a broad coalition. Now, we're involved in two kinds of coalitions like you guys are. One kind of coalition are strategic coalitions, coalitions where we share a broad series of concerns on many issues with the other groups, no matter what we're working on. Right to the City is a coalition like that, nationally and locally, that shares a broad group of concerns. Or we have a network in New England, which may emerge here as I'm looking at this crowd, called New Road, New England Workers and Residents Organizing Against Displacement, New Road. As we say, don't take Wall Street, follow the New Road. So that's a strategic coalition. But we're also involved in tactical coalitions with broad ranges of forces, you know, to buy buildings, to get new legislation through City Council. And even while we're insisting on maintaining our initiative and militancy, we're trying to present that and frame it in a way that alienates as few people as possible. And I remember in one eviction blockade, a friend of mine and the person facing the blockade, this is one of our earliest blockades around the bank movement, she insisted on taking the stand against Bank of America. Look, this is a matter of principle. If somebody wants to buy this property and move in and live here, then I'll move. But as long as Bank of America is the one trying to evict me, I'll fight. And what she was trying to say and what made a difference to her was that it wasn't just about her home. She wanted to frame it not about her home, but about the whole struggle, something broader. And I think that's true of an awful lot of our people. And so when we talk about framing and how you blend radical initiative with building a coalition, that's part of it too. Does this make sense to the average person out there? Even if they don't agree with us, does it make sense that we're doing it? So those are my observations from our experience on the coalition and tactics. Thanks.
Thanks to everybody. So we definitely have some time for questions. So once again, the theme of this panel is coalition building and strategies to win. I'm going to try and take a progressive stack to what we decided to do. So I'm going to ask folks to raise their hands, and then I'm going to try and write down your names. We're going to prioritize people who haven't spoken, women, and people of color in our progressive stack. So we'll try and see how that works. And you can ask a question to either one panelist, or you can ask it to all of the panelists. So if anyone has any questions, if you want to raise your hand right now, and I'll ask you what it means.
So I hear a lot of talk about building systems and breaking them apart, or building new systems for the protection of citizens. What about not going after systems, rather changing culture?
Want to pass to Gene first? Matthew.
So they can control the light.
I think in order to change the systems, you have to change the whole paradigm of the way people think. And so that is where we're at. We are trying to change the way people think, the way people see the whole system. So in order to change paradigm, we have to present the system the way it is, to show the flaws in it. Not necessarily creating a system, but to, like you were saying, break it down, but to change the hearts and minds of everyone who's looking at what's going on.
And panelists, please be fluid. If there's something you want to add, raise your hand or something.
I think that a culture is a product of the underlying systems that operate underneath it, and that the way to change that culture is through changing those systems. But to get to that point first requires spreading the experience of people taking action for themselves, taking direct action for themselves in large numbers, to the extent that we have a very large number of people who are willing to do that. And once we've achieved that, then we'll have the strength to change both systems and culture.
So is there any before I go to Spirit? No, sorry. Take the mic.
Well, a lot of us, especially those of us who've been around for a long time, think it's just going to take a march with 200,000 people in the street and things are going to change. And sometimes we get frustrated that doesn't happen. That big spectacle. And I think part of like changing the culture involves like relationship building, like I've been saying before, and organizing, developing relationships with communities that are different than yours, and work together on something. And also, I love the SAFE model and the SeaSol model, where SeaSol goes out and, it's not that you're just fighting for one individual person. Some transformation happens and they learn how to get involved and fight for somebody else. And the same thing with SAFE, where it is a movement, a neighborhood movement, with the neighbors supporting the people who are about to lose their house. And it's very, very grassroots, and that's what I think changing the system is all about, on a very little level, but it's really big.
Question starts out with a comment, which is that the tenants, Lynn, thank you for bringing and highlighting some of the tensions that were happening on the panel earlier. And the tenants union values leadership above all else, and you are a particular person in our organization that really holds us to those values. And as a movement, we really need to be holding ourselves accountable to that and actually learning lessons and adapting and figuring out how to do that better. Since this question is the last question, which is why do you all think it's important for tenants to be both strategizing and making decisions and being the voices of this movement, and how do you think organizations do or don't?
Well, in the tenants union, for instance, we have like organizers that respect the values of one of the most important things in the tenants union is cultivation of the leaders, and people come to the campaign, and organizers can provide things like trainings for us, and do all the logistics of, we got to get an accessible meeting space and help with outreach, but the tenants actually make the decisions in the campaigns. That's how tenants can be leaders in campaigns. I think that, each group probably has like their own process. SeaSol, Nicholsville, because even though Nicholsville, they're not like official tenants, but they are, in a way of their community, and everybody has obviously had some really good organizational support. Otherwise, we wouldn't have leaders like that are on this panel.
I think if we can all funnel our organizing and the strategy and the center point with the tenant, we can do a lot. There's a different organization with different ideology. It will be difficult, maybe, or political background. It will be difficult, to be on the same table and not to disagree. Maybe we can agree again, but it will take a long process. But one thing that is very important is if the tenants are included and they become like the leaders in this country, their voices is real. Their voices can be heard. I cannot say for them because they are there, and it will become more humane story when you tell their story, and when you say how this kind of proposal will impact your life. There's mothers, single moms with children, who don't have jobs, who, if this proposal is implemented, they will be homeless. So this kind of strategy of, rallying or, behind the homeless people, behind the tenant is very strong. And I think we should give a support to them. And not only that, as I've said earlier, the diversity part of it. If there's only one kind of community or one kind of people, and it undermines the diversity of Seattle, the diversity of the tenant. We have different tenants of different language, different race, and involving them and making this fight a tenant fight and not individual or organization fight, I think it will be very successful and we can win that. Thank you.
So my question is mostly for Steve, but I'd like to hear from other people. Steve, do you ever feel like after 40 years of doing this work that you just become kind of the institutionalized opposition in Boston? And what do you do to try to fight against that? Does your board have to deal with that, this whole notion about being co-opted if you have too many paid staffers, if you get a paid executive director? Because I know there's been a lot of dialogue in SAFE and SeaSol and other organizations like that. I'm just wondering what your take on this is.
Well, I guess I'd say that there's very little of City Life's opposition by any of our staff or leaders that's become acceptable or accepted by the other side. So I don't think we're really worried much about co-optation. I mean, we just have different worries than that right now. That could be a place in the future, but right now, we're more worried about being repressed, I'd say. But, and for me personally, I think, you know, I've been gradually stepping aside. I mean, I'm here and I'm loving to be here with you guys, and I was the person who came 2.5 years ago. But a lot of other people now go out to other meetings and speak for us, and my role in that way, that public role, is greatly diminished by strategy, by a strategy that I accept. So that helps to keep our voice fresh, and it helps to keep, and helps to create space for people to move up through the ranks and find their voice. I hope that answers.
Yeah, I'd just like to, well, in the case of SeaSol was founded by members of the IWW, Industrial Workers of the World, which is a revolutionary syndicalist union, and has always been historically against having paid permanent positions, because their experience was that the longer you have paid permanent positions, the more they become, the people in those positions become their own self-interested group that represents themselves and not the workers themselves. And that's kind of how the American trade union movement would die down, since in the early 20th century it was more workers taking action for themselves, and over time they got moved away and bureaucracy started growing. And I think that we should all be extremely careful of the dangers of a growing bureaucracy, because it has happened so many times historically to movements where they start off radical and gradually they become absorbed by the system because they have permanent professional politicians who are the only people who really speak and act for those movements in the end.
Hey, this is Bryce from SAFE. You know, I mean, I think that, you know, things like having paid staff is a tool, not that the people are doing, you know, like, the position is a tool, though. The position is a tool, and tools can be used for good or ill. You know, it really just depends on how they're being used. I think it's, in a way, it's a bit of a false faith. But my question, similar to what I asked last night, what I want to ask the whole panel is, how do we confront fear, both within ourselves and the fear that's, you know, usually the main barrier to someone you're trying to organize with saying yes to get involved?
So, you know, working with the homeless community, it's a pretty marginalized group of people, and fear is a big problem, and just the lack of empowerment. And, you know, how I try and combat that is I get down and I talk to people on their level. I'm not talking down to them, trying to bring them up to where I'm at. I get down there with them and I talk to them about what's important to them. And that's, you know, that's how I do it, so.
I'll answer this question based on my union organizing skills. Fear, how you can handle it is first, you touch the issues that are more concerned to the person directly. So when you speak about the issue, you speak about their issue and you agitate them based on their issue. Then they come out of the box and they speak out, they open out, and they will tell you. So not only you tell them about their issue, now there's a fear now. Either, you know, forever it is, for this case, let us take Seattle Housing Authority, they know that this person is part of the, organizing committee, or is more involved, or is more radical in, stepping forward, and they fear being, victimized or whatever it is. So now, there's what's called the inoculation. The inoculation is a kind of like the vaccine when you're getting the flu shot, the immunization. So you tell them what it takes for them not to be held hostage by their fear. So once you tell them that, and you go around that, and you give support and hope, and then you'll see that person is on your side, and it goes like that. Yeah.
Fear is probably one of the biggest things that stop us from doing a lot of things. And so I tell people to do, being brave is not being fearless. Being brave is being afraid and doing it anyway. Taking that step, and then suddenly you find that you are more empowered and the fear starts to go away. And by doing it myself, experiencing the fear myself, sitting up here is kind of scary. Being afraid I'm going to say something stupid. But to just go ahead to show that, hey, you know what, I'm a regular person. I'm just as afraid as you are, but I'm willing to take that step. And I'm willing to take that step with you. So doing it yourself first, showing that it can be done. Not expecting anybody to do anything that you won't do yourself. I think it helps, and then when they can see an example of a person being just as afraid as they are and still doing it anyway, that it allows them to step forward also. Oh, this guy?
I just really quickly say, in my experience, fear is initially replaced with anger. You know, if you have that sense of righteousness and that sense of power along with the grievance, you get angry instead of being afraid. But in the long run, that doesn't sustain. In the long run, you really replace it with love and solidarity. And that's what sustains you to not have fear in the future, in my opinion.
One of the things I've been most impressed about this conference is kind of how many different groups it's brought together and how many different communities from different cities and different regions. What do you think is the most important area for different groups and different communities to collaborate together, and how can groups work together more?
I think that all of us have things that we can agree upon. You know, that within this huge circle of all the things that we want to do, find that one thing that we all can agree upon and start there. That's, I think, how you kind of build a movement and build bonds, is to find where you guys can touch each other. Where do we connect? And by finding those connections, you can build bigger connections.
Just to amplify the same lines she has said, I think we have a lot of differences, we have a lot of things in common, and there's a lot of things that we disagree. And once we focus on our communality, the things that we share, the things that can unite us, and we, that makes, makes us more united than focusing on our differences. And also to involve different communities and different people, it's building a sustainable coalition through the faith communities, through schools, like the colleges, through the community activists in every city or every neighborhood. Like that is the kind of how we can build a strong movement. And if a movement is being led by only one person, it can be defeated so easily. If it is being led by a community and the people, it will survive and it gets more strong and bold.
I think right now, in the immediate sense, that there should be a focus on the shootings and police and communities of color. I know that in tenants union we've been having discussions on how the tenants union can, incorporate, some of that work and how to, as it relates to housing justice. And I wasn't able to be on it, but there was a conference call about that movement, what's happening now, and some people in tenants union were on that. So I think it's really important right now to take this stand, and whether we're involved with housing, labor, or what other movements.
Hello, everybody. You're all beautiful. So good to see you all here. I have found out, I'm really old, so I'm talking from age, years of stuff. Okay. I remember in the 60s, they used to tell us, you can't do that. That's not going to change. Sexism has been with us for thousands of years, and you can't change it. Or it's going to, So all these roadblocks. But somehow, I guess we were deaf, because we just went ahead and did this shit. Excuse my language. We didn't listen to them saying, no, you can't do that. And I can tell you, I saw stuff happen fast. I saw stuff happen slow too, but a lot of stuff happened fast. And I've been in the labor movement too. I still am in a way. And we've won victory after victory in 775 Northwest, SEIU, home care workers. And they started off with nothing. This little old union group came along, and that people were working at minimum wage, period, with nothing else. So over a number of years, we were able to get excellent top-of-the-line health care, everything covered, eyes, everything, raises. There were no raises before. We're our top wage now. It's not real high, but considering all the other workers that do our work, it is high. So we're making our top. We're expecting to make over $15 an hour next year. We were told many times by our beloved legislature, I say very sarcastically, that we couldn't do it. But we were such a nuisance, that we did do it. And we were, seriously annoying. So the thing is that I'm a radical. I don't know when that started, probably from very early years. And the thing about it, and I'm from London, Matt's from London, but I was in London years, before he was even born. And North London area, which is supposed to be a very rough, London area. But I know that people were scared out of their minds, because, in World War II when bombs were dropping. But I never saw anybody show it to me. They sang these silly songs and so on, So, and I know that my dad was scared, but he never showed it. So I don't know what that is. I guess it's courage. It must be. But all I can tell you, I get on the bus, and I talk to people on the bus all the time, and no one tells me to shut up. Nobody tells me I'm being annoying. And they all understand that this system is, I won't say the word, but seriously messed up. Every single person I have talked to at the bus stop, on the buses, my neighbors, etc., know it's messed up. And they don't like it. And probably they're, basically, a lot of poor people, poor working class people, because they have to ride the bus, etc. Maybe some lower middle class, I don't know. But they're certainly not any well-to-do people, generally speaking. So they know that it's messed up. And they are tired of it. And they cheer if anybody speaks up against the system. So I want to, and I know we can do it. I don't know when, I don't have a date, but I can tell you we can do it. It's been done already. Stuff's been done that they told us was impossible. They told us to shut up, but we did it. And our problem was we didn't keep doing it. We did not keep doing it, and it's people like Josh and you people that keep on doing it no matter what. Don't get too disillusioned, because they say that around the corner is the miracle. We don't see the miracle because it's around the corner. So you don't see that you're winning because they're bluffing. They try to make sure that they're so powerful you know, and they can listen to every phone call. But I'll tell you, who's going to listen to, you know, hours of people talking about their hemorrhoids? You know what I mean? And what doilies they're going to wear, you know, pay for Christmas dinner. I mean, you know, who's going to listen to all that stuff? So, you know, they've got lots of holes in their, you know, defense or, you know, oppression in their super walls of oppression against us. There's lots of holes, and we broke through them in the past, and we can break through it again, and we can win, and we can make a better world. Because this world is this capitalist system. Yes, I am anti-capitalist. Is going down.
Hi. So first of all, thank you all. The work that has been highlighting. Thank you all. The work that's been highlighting here. I see it's like really beautiful and inspiring and noble. So thank you. But over the course of this conference, I also have heard not a whole lot, but some stigma against some of the more non-conventional types of housing justice-related direct action, such as organizing encampments, squatting, vehicle habitation. And I have friends, and I've seen people who have pushed their comfort zones and done these kinds of things and found it to be an incredibly empowering experience to escape the cage of rent of their own accord. And I understand that this isn't irrational stigma, and I understand that there's like a whole lot that plays into it, and I know a lot about what that is. But I'm hopeful about combining these two movements, and at the very least that it could be something like that could look like at the very least support networks for people to fall back on to decrease the effectiveness of the terror tactics of the other side, and maybe even at the most to make something like rent strikes a credible threat. So I was hoping people could talk a little bit about if there's any kind of intersection or potential intersection between those two movements, or what that could look like.
I do know one thing, is that when you stay in your house after it's been sold, you're considered a squatter and a criminal, and they will arrest you and put you in jail. So we have lots of them. We move back into the house, and we will consider the squatters. So we're not anti-squatting.
Pro-squatting.
So my thoughts on this is just that we need to start looking at this as everybody deserves a safe, hygienic place to lay their head at night.
Yes.
Regardless, and until we can all come to that, then there's going to be these divides, and it's sad because as long as we're divided, we weaken ourselves.
I'm hoping for more of a relationship with Houseless organizations and people that are, housing justice activists. In my own personal experience, I did spend 2 years homeless in San Francisco in the early 80s, and there wasn't an organized movement of homeless people, so I really appreciate that there is now. And I also want to know, and when I was talking about the state violence and murder of people of color recently, that there's also state violence and criminalization of homeless people. And one thing that has really been on my mind in the past few weeks was that there were a couple of firemen that beat up a homeless man in Pioneer Square. And they had problems before that too. They'd been arrested before. The firemen were drunk, and they beat up this homeless person, and they were acquitted in court. Now they're trying to get their jobs back. So homeless people are targeted by police, or arrested, or there's laws that forbid them from being in parks. There was even a law that against some homeless people from riding buses, and it's an issue that should be on our radar.
I just want to add something to what Lynn said, that we need to be paying attention to the laws that get passed here in King County especially, because I don't know if any of you have been paying attention to what's going on in Burien. but they passed the anti-smell ordinance. So that effectively means that if you don't smell good, I don't know what that's very subjective, but if you don't smell good, the police can arrest you and move you off of that property for 7 days. So these things are happening around us all the time, and we need to be paying attention to it, and we need to be working against that kind of thing, because it's really, really oppressive. And it reinforces the marginalization of people who have real problems, and we really need to change that focus. So just be aware.
And very quickly, is there anyone else that wants to jump on this?
I do have to ask, do they have anti-smell police?
I don't know how they're enforcing
It's a dog.
but if somebody makes a comment, they can have the police come in and take care of it. But it's very, very subjective. What's that?
Does that?
Yeah, you probably know something.
Yet at
more
the
about
same
it.
time, they're cutting funding to hygiene centers.
So if somebody's wearing too much perfume or too much,
Yeah, that was
aftershave.
the pro side of that ordinance. That's what this was all about, but that's not really what it's about. Because it focuses on libraries, which tend to be places where people can go during the day because they get out of shelter.
Yeah.
So that's what this is.
I have a question that's kind of like, in what percentage point do you guys see three factors? And I know in East Coast or internationally here, maybe has to do with our local politicians. Do you see maybe just there's a grassroots swelling that's going on that's causing a lot of, I think, positive change. I think there's some positive change in here. Is it the grassroots, perhaps, or is it maybe the fact that politicians have taken some nerve, particularly in Seattle here? We have that from the electoral sphere. Or is it maybe initiatives that, in Seattle here we had a couple of initiatives go in a positive direction for once. And do you see, maybe what's the most important thing to have sort of a momentum going forward from this? Should we put more focus on grassroots maybe, or should we put more focus on seeing that the next electoral campaign we all go out and stump the what do you call it, alleys and byways and streets and stuff for these different candidates? Or should we maybe put an emphasis on what has worked here in the past year or so, which has been sort of a pushing of initiatives that there seems to be a little bit of a groundswell for, but kind of directed to you, James. And,
I'm James, Socialist Alternative, although before that I was for a year, I was the organizer with SAFE. I'm actually wearing the shirt that I was wearing when we got arrested at the Wells Fargo defending Jeremy's home.
Yeah.
I love this whole this coalition, and just in the years since I've been with Socialist Alternative, we've worked in coalitions with like every group up here. The Stepping Forward was with the Tenants Union, SHA Tenants. The $15 an hour was at the SEIU. Progressive taxing for bus funding with the TRU. We were building coalition meetings with Black Lives Matter movement, which doesn't mean we're taking it over. It means we're connecting these groups that are coming out of it and building them to get some more organization. Eviction blockades and SAFE, and with Rising Tide, the march on September 21st. And I mean, there's just so much amazing things that are coming out right now. There's so much ground to fight on with housing, and it's like inexorably linked to climate justice and all these. What I'm most excited about is this type of thing, is all of these movements coming together and pushing on the underlying causes that are keeping on this, yeah. So like Ivy said, with this woo of anti-capitalism, it's exactly it, and socialism is an alternative. Not USSR type socialism, but democratic socialism. It's just the idea of working people getting into the political arena and putting forward our voices. I'm seeing that all over the city. I'm so excited about all this stuff that's going on. And I think that we just need to keep on in this track and getting bolder and more organized so we can fight and demand our rights and create these human rights.
I just wanted to put forward an argument that we should not spend any time at all on electoral politics. Because the only things we should be spending time on are things that enable a large number of ordinary people to take actions for themselves, instead of relying on experts to act on their behalf. And using electoral means people putting their faith in politicians to change things for them, and politicians in the long run especially, even though they may do things in the short term, in the long run they won't change things for people at all. They'll just get absorbed into the system and corrupted by power. And so we just need to build the capacity for people on the lower levels of society to take action for themselves in the greatest numbers possible.
I just want to respond real quick. I know, I come from this community of radical organizers and stuff, and I know there's a lot of hostility towards any type of party politics. I just want to caution anyone on outright rejecting socialists, because this is like holdovers from the Red Square. Socialists, our type of socialist, stands with everything that we're doing here. It's just a tool. Using an election is just a tool. Having Shama in office, and we try to curtail that by she doesn't take home more than the average worker's salary, that she makes no corporate money. It is a different type of politics. It's a type of politics that has helped every one of these movements. And Matt, like you said, with lifetime politicians, that is absolutely not what we're going for. We don't think that just electing the people is the way to do it. It's a tool. It's one tool in the toolbox. So we want to use all the tools.
If electoral politics is people's thing, they can do it. And I'm saying, everybody needs to be converted to anarchism, anti-authoritarianism, etc. But I want to let you know, we're going to win stepping forward. Whether or not we have a socialist party or not, the tenants union had a very good campaign back in 2007. Where we made the housing authority reform their whole grievance procedures, which were disproportionately taking Section 8 vouchers away from immigrant families and families that were headed by single women of color. And that campaign was led by the tenants who were losing their Section 8 vouchers. And I don't remember all the coalition partners back then. We didn't have the Socialist Party, and we won the campaign. So I don't want to put down the party or anything, but I just want to say it's not necessary for victory.
My name is Abdi, for those of you, a lot of people are listening to them. I just wondering what's your name, but I cannot cocoon. I am very thankful to Jim to invite me to this event. And I have to express how amazed and how proud you should be of this organization. I am very humble. The young people and mature people have gathered together for social good cause. There is way overdue to be taken care. Now my question for the panel is, you forgot to reach the churches of the different ethnicity? Do you need a translator? A volunteer for that. The Spanish community needs your help. The Islamic people need your help. My people, the Native American, need your help. And I think you have the basis. You have the goal. You have the inspiration and that energy, the burning through your brains. I'm so happy. I'm embrace it. I will give you my blessings. But at the same time, I want you to consider something. It's a lot of churches in the community. They would like to hear from you, and they didn't know that you exist. I will do my best to promote your cause, but you must reach them because you needed that voice, you needed the manpower, and see, they don't know that you exist. See, you don't talk, I don't hear you. And I think Seattle needs you, King County needs you. And it's a lot of people, they need your help. And one way to overpower ourselves, overpower the coalitions, is by reaching those churches and bring those messages. And boy, they can talk. Worse than me, I'm Puerto Rican. But I think something you should think about. It's just an open suggestion. I said, where they have been? Where they have been, these people? I heard you have been for several years in here, in Seattle. I never heard. And I said, I get around a lot. Jim will tell you. But I see the community acknowledge that you exist. And you have to reach them out. So you can use their brain power, the support, and they can use your help. And God bless you, and God bless America, and keep trying, because you're doing a wonderful job. Thank you.
We did a great outreach to the East African community through the mosques, through the community centers, and they were very involved during the SHA public hearing. At any given time, there was more than 200 and 300 used to come to when SHA were doing the hearing. So I think it is also better to involve other communities of color to go through the church, through the interfaith communities, and have that strategy of organizing through the like the faith community. I think it is very important. That is someone. If you go through the pastor or the imam or the rabbi, those people their voices can be heard so loud than any other organizer. Those are the people who talk to a big congregation every day or every week or every month, and it's very important. I think we should involve them. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Abby. And she's right. That is probably one of our biggest weak points, is being able to reach out to that coalition, because that is a huge network of people that really agree with us on most points. However, I know I'm not the person to do it. We need volunteers.
She volunteered. That's what I heard.
Oh boy. Somebody's trying to say, "Oh, shut up."
Hello, my name is Jerry, and I've enjoyed the couple of days that I've been here in solidarity with all the other groups. And I did want to, I guess, piggyback on the part of community activation in the churches. I'm at Emerald City Community Seventh-day Adventist Church, and we had a community service day recently, and I was able to invite Denisha and another person from the Tips Union, and that went very well. It's just putting yourself out there. If we could just reach one person, we're having somebody that's not knowledgeable about maybe what's going on, and it worked well. So I guess all of our prospective churches or places of worship, if you could spread the word like that. If there are, open times when you have community issues and you want to, invite people, by all means, try it. It works.
Thank you, panelists, for being here, and thank you, audience. Before we have our closing statement from Steve Meacham, we have a special announcement to tie this all in from Katie.
So we're getting close to the end here, so let's revive our energy with a little chant. I'm going to say one voice, one fight, and say housing is a human right. Okay? One voice, one fight.
Housing is a human right.
One voice, one fight.
Housing is a human right.
One voice, one fight.
Housing is a human right.
Because we believe that housing is a human right. And we all know that all over this city and this county and this country, country and actually all over the world. People are being displaced by development or foreclosure, paying rents they can't afford, living in tents or on the street. What's being done politically right now to solve these problems falls far short. What we're all doing as organizers and activists is a really good start, but we all know we have a really long way to go to build up a movement that can actually make housing a human right. So how do we do this? As Ivy reminded us a few minutes ago, lots and lots of people know that the system is messed up. So that's not the problem, first and foremost. I mean, there's a lot of education and awareness raising that needs to go on, but in a lot of ways, I think today, people are more ready for a radical movement than they ever have been. So what I want to say is the big thing that we lack today on the left is organizations that are both really powerful and that also legitimately and democratically represent and engage large numbers of working and poor people. So now, labor unions used to fill this role a lot more effectively than they're able to do today. That's not to say that labor unions are irrelevant today, far from it. But more and more, the globalized economy and the shifting precarious conditions that we work under mean that for the vast majority of working and poor people, workplace-based unions are not a realistic way to organize to exert their collective power. Most people have no organized voice. And so there's been a growing recognition, as Lynn was talking about earlier, that the focus of the struggle between capital and labor, between profit and people, is shifting to the city. And there's this idea of the right to the city that's being sort of brought back and spreading. And so I think the question we have to ask is, what kind of organizations do we need to build to effectively assert our right to the city? And I think the answer lies in a lot of the work that people here are already starting to do. So basically, the most important thing we can be doing is building democratic membership organizations of working and poor people that fight around issues, fight around housing, fight around transit, fight around homelessness, shelter, workers' issues like wages and working conditions. These have to be organizations that are flexible in their strategies and tactics, I think fighting both in the political arena while also doing direct action and exerting direct economic and public pressure on private interests like corporations and landlords. Now, there's no clear one model for this kind of organizing. In a lot of ways, we're in a historically new situation, moving into new territory, and there's a lot of experimentation that has to be done. So all of these groups that are working today are going about it differently, making mistakes, and hopefully learning from them. Now, I think if we can continue to build the work that we're all doing successfully, these democratic membership organizations will be like the bones of a new movement. Without them, it's just a formless mass. An issue comes up, people sort of get a little mad, and then everyone goes home. But these organizations are what are going to bring people in for the long haul. But for a movement to really get up and walk, all the bones need to work together as a skeleton. They need to support each other, coordinate their activities. So I'm here to just tell you a little bit about an emerging coalition that's sort of coming together here in Seattle. For the last couple of years, SAFE and the Transit Riders Union and Share, Wheel, and Nicholsville have sort of started working together on some of our campaigns. For those of you that don't know, Share, Wheel, and Nicholsville are all homeless-led organizations that do shelters in tent cities. As Lisa mentioned, she's from Nicholsville. And they really sort of started this coalition. And then Transit Riders Union and SAFE have joined, and in that way sort of broadened out the issues that we're working on to include transit and foreclosures and evictions. And so as this has happened, we realized that it would make sense to sort of found this coalition a little more formally, figure out how we make decisions together and what we do. And so we've sort of been doing that, and we're at a point now where we're going to just start, making that more public, and with a clear process for, inviting other organizations to join as well. And so at this point, our name for the moment is Seattle Right to the City Coalition. And we're going to be working in the coming months on sort of a website and other stuff like that. But what can a coalition like this do? Lots of things. I mean, the basic thing is solidarity, getting people out to each other's actions and events, and having some kind of coordinated messaging, like a website, calendar, here's what's going on, But over and above that, I mean, really the sky's the limit. I mean, we could work on campaigns that aren't the province of one particular organization. And we could even, work together to found new organizations. And like Matt said, another big thing is like education, skills training, organizations helping each other with different aspects of our work. So That's all I have to say, and I guess you can talk to anyone from SAFE, Transit Riders Union, Share, Wheel, Nicholsville, if you want to know more, and we'll, some of the organizations here, and we'll probably be reaching out to you soon to talk more. So thank you.
Thank you, Katie. And to meet that invitation, SAFE also has another invitation in terms of collaboration. We're a partner at the Collaboratory, and so this big old space is wide open for a safe invitation for you and your groups to work with us in creating more events like this completely free, except for the rent that we pay. And so that's a safe invitation. And because it costs, and that the King County Police, in evicting us from Jean's home, jacked all of our banners and our equipment. So we're passing the hat to ask you to help us out in inviting you to work with us. To close us out, Steve Meacham.
I'm going to pass the mic to Steve, and if any of the panelists have a final thought, if it's brief in a sentence or two, they want to share while the mic passes down, please feel free.
Oh, yeah.
And what's most important in the movement is caring about each other. And these grassroots communities and organizations do care about each other. It wasn't like the Barton's cause was this cause. There was people that they cared about, and I hope people realize that that helps a movement get stronger.
I just want to do Byron's favorite chant. Never give up, never surrender.
Let's keep the fight real.
Let's keep working with this until we have a world without bosses or landlords.
Solidarity.
Well, I would like to close out the way that I opened up last night, and both thanking you for honoring me to invite me here, but also by recognizing the enormous amount of work that pours out of the people in this room for social justice. So we've applauded each other a lot, but if you don't mind doing something, just turn to somebody next to you and thank them for their work. Just a couple of observations. There's no real way that I can improve on everything that's been said. A couple of observations. Like most of you, I'm an optimist. I am thrilled to see how far we've come in our struggle. But I think that we're called upon to use how far we've come in our struggle to brace ourselves for how far we have to go. Because we need a movement at least 10 times bigger than what we have. And there's a theory of guerrilla war that says, what do you do when you're strategically strong and tactically weak? Meaning you have a program that addresses the grievances of the vast majority, but you don't have that much power to implement it. And the theory of guerrilla war says, initially, you don't go in to capture the city, you go in and you leave stronger than you went in. You capture some arms, you raise consciousness, and you leave stronger than you went in. And so I think for us to leave here today thinking to ourselves, we have to leave every struggle that we're involved in stronger than we went in. And that means a higher level of consciousness, a more sophisticated organization, and really, really firm leadership development that is creating people who are leaving our movement, leaving each one of our movements as a doorway into an all-around organization for social change. And that means that all of us have to pay attention to what that organization, what that left might look like. So with that, I leave you, and thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you, Steve Meacham. One more event thing that we can do. The Backbone campaign on the fly right here today made us dedicated housing sign so that we can take a group photo with, showing direct action art at work. So if everybody can stand up and maybe we can organize to stand by the sign. I don't really know. So we have a special guest on our chant for the day. Woo! All right.